Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. And I hope you enjoy this new show, whether you're viewing it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the episode. I do want to thank you for being part of my audience. You can also find links to videos or podcasts on miamighostchronicles.com, as well as where you can submit your story about any eerie experiences you've had, which I would love to hear about. Just go to the Submit Your Story tab. Please subscribe to our channel so that you receive notification of when we release a new show. And find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This is where I usually live stream and where I give you a behind the scenes look at locations where new episodes are being filmed at. I also tell you about all the interesting guests that will be appearing soon on Stories of the Supernatural. I hope you enjoy the show, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. And today I am more than excited because I have somebody from my hometown, from Miami. His name is Xaviant Haze. And besides the fact that he's a Miamian like I am, uh, just he's an what he writes about, I think, is fascinating and an understatement. First of all, he's an American author and a freelance researcher of conspiracy theories, lost civilizations, ancient aliens, ancient giants, and the globalist plans of the New World Order. He's the author of The Suppressed History of America and hosts one of the most complete online metaphysical libraries with links and resources to all major works in the field. He travels the world exploring and documenting findings on lost cities and the myths of the pre-Diluvian world, and he lives in South Beach. So, anyway, how are you doing today, Xavier?
Oh, I'm great. It's another sunny day here.
Yeah, I
How are
know,
you?
I know, I know. Lucky us. Every time, whenever I look at these weather reports for the rest of the country, we're like, thumbs up, yay. Yeah, it's a nice day out here.
Even when it's like super windy, and honestly, it's been kind of a little cold, and it's definitely been a strange winter.
I know.
Uh,
But
but
it's really
still, I
funny.
can't
What we
complain.
call cold, everybody else would go, "What are you talking about?" But I tell everybody down here, if it dips into the 50s or 40s, everybody pulls out there. Oh, it's really cold, and it's
Yep,
like because we're used to 80s. The 80s,
all the
is
time.
all the
Yeah, leaves
time.
want to start falling from the trees when it gets in the 50s.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we've all got very thin blood down here. We feel the cold right away. And I laugh because I tell everybody we don't usually have big coats. We just have like light. So when it gets a little bit cold, you see people layering with all their thin sweaters and stuff because around here we just don't need those big coats that they use up in the northern states. So yeah,
Well,
it's
it was strange because I just got back from London, and
oh,
I
you
had to
did.
shop for a jacket, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this?
That's right, because it's like what the norm is. I mean, if you walk into a lot of these stores, even in the fall, like up north, they have all these like parkas and coats and scarves and galosh, all this stuff. And down here, that thing will just stay on the rack and not move. I mean,
Yeah,
I have a great coat for when I travel, and I'm not kidding. I've had it like for 10 years. I have two coats, like one for with jeans and another one for like a little bit nicer. But I've had them forever because I used them very little.
exactly. I mean, I go to Ross.
Yes,
Can't find
exactly.
anything, and I'm like, oh no. So I luckily found something at H&M, but
Ex-
I'll use it basically if I go to London or whatever. I mean, it's a
exactly.
couple times a year.
Exactly.
Uh, and
Exactly.
I
And
hate having to, and being a like a professional beach bum, uh, the idea of having to like wear jeans and sneakers and dressing up. Like when I was in New York, I couldn't stand it because like every day you had to like dress up. You got to
Right.
put boots on or shoes, sneak, whatever. It's just too much. I
Socks.
mean, yes, Knox. I mean, give me flip flops and t-shirt and shorts, and we're good.
Right. And people don't understand because especially not all Florida, but South Florida where we're at, it's subtropical weather. Okay.
Caribbean,
So you need, you want loose clothing. You want your body to be able to breathe because if not, between the heat and the humidity, which is the
humidity.
normal,
Yes.
it'll kill you. So for us, that's what I'm saying. Around here, like you said, a shirt with some shorts, if you're a girl, sandals, or maybe, that's it. I mean, even socks sometimes you don't even want to wear socks because it gets hot and
Oh,
sweaty.
I know. If I'm playing basketball, about the only time I'll put on some socks is
Right,
t-shirts.
right. Yeah, like if you're going to do something like that. But otherwise, um, I think I tell everybody the attire down here. I think we're the only ones in the country that have this type of attire between like I said, it's not only the heat, it's the humidity that we have down here that you have to wear a certain type of clothing, the fit, and just the
Yes.
materials because if not, you'd be like a walking sweat puddle wherever
You
you
are.
go.
You learn early that you don't wear silk.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that only the natives here get it. As far as the clothing and how to survive the heat, because I tell everybody, I grew up. I was born here in Miami, and I grew up, and um, there was a time even where fans people would use a lot of the fans and the overhead fans and this, and you survived and you got used to it. Now we're like I say, I'm a crybaby now. If it's not air conditioned, it's like where's my AC quick. But yeah, it's a place, all very unique place, and I'm sure you know it by now, having been here like we discussed earlier a long time. But
Yeah.
let me ask you something. You, like you said, you self-described beach bum, which I don't think that's, well, maybe you see yourself that way. But how did you end up authoring or doing research on these types of topics?
I think it comes from being in a house that I wasn't subjugated to religion or any sort of thought control.
Okay.
Uh, I kind of was, my parents were just kind of open and allow me to, they're artists, so they kind of just allow me to check out whatever I kind of wanted to. And I think I was 12 when I saw my first episode of In Search of,
Yes, I remember
uh,
that.
which was about the Coral Castle. So another
Oh,
Miami connection.
yes.
Uh, Anyone who comes to Miami and doesn't visit Coral Castle really, really needs to. It's one of the mysteries of the world and one of the
Yeah.
wonders. It's incredible, truly incredible.
Well, the truth is that even now they haven't quite figured out how this guy did that. How he was
No, they
able to
haven't.
make I mean, if you ever looked at this guy, he was a real puny little guy. He was a short little guy, skinny. And they can't figure
Yes.
out, first of all, how he was able to haul some of these stones and how he was able to pivot them and all these things there. They really are not sure how he did that. So, yeah.
It's a true mystery, truly
Mm-hmm.
incredible. He claimed himself he knew how the pyramids were built and had it, I mean, something to do with some sort of sound levitation or electromagnetics or some sort of anti-gravity, maybe with magnets. I mean, there's the whole mystery of the black box, that has been seen in some of his photos that they never found. Um,
See, I hadn't heard about that. What is it that some photographs of him, what they see some type of black box in the picture and they still don't know what that is?
right, there's a few photographs of him kind of hoisting things and moving stuff, but then you could always see a black box, and it's
Wow.
uh, they haven't been because when he died, they don't know what happened. I mean, they disappeared. His death. So uh, we don't know, and that's kind of the curious thing. But he talked a lot about magnetics and sort of reverse currents, and he was looking for that specific area. So maybe it has to do with ley lines, and I mean, you're talking coral and heavy chunks,
Yes, I mean for anybody, I mean
tons.
I mean you can see it on a television, but you really don't really understand until you see it up in front of you how heavy those stones would be. Uh, I mean, just for anything, forget Levitt, because some of that he's made them into doors that they pivot, like you could
Yes.
push them.
Right,
It's
right.
still
That was
like, how
amazing
did he
too.
do that?
With your finger, push it with your finger, and it's like
Exactly.
how.
How did he do
So
that?
they kind of kept that covered up for a long time. Uh, and basically still do. I mean, it's not too many people even realize, you know, that once you come to Miami, you could go to Coral Castle as
Right. I
well.
mean, it's a small place. It's not a big place, but once you go in there, you really start looking at what he did, and you kind of read his history. Uh, and that's another thing. This guy was not really a scientist per se. He wasn't like somebody that had a background in physics or mathematics or engineering or anything. He was a Latvian immigrant that came over here, and he still figured this stuff out. It's incredible.
Yeah, what kind of knowledge did he have? He
Right. Or how
basically
did he gain
walked
it?
down here too. He walked from New York, I guess, all the way down here. What was he searching for? It's truly
I didn't
an
know. See,
incredible
that part I
mystery.
didn't know either. For all see, so what because what he immigrated to New York and he walked. He like hitchhiked or walked his way down from.
He walked all the way down. Yep.
You know what? Talk about talk about somebody that's determined. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly. And for what? I mean, why choose this? Because I mean, when he got the property, the people were looking at him like, "Are you sure? I mean, can't do anything with it. It's useless land." They basically gave it to him because they thought he was
Right.
crazy.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't realize that back then, at the turn of the century, all you had basically was some people coming. This was like the land boom, and yeah, but basically, it was very sparsely populated, and people would just come out here. You had to deal with talk about the heat and the mosquitoes.
The heat and mosquitoes.
Uh
Yeah,
huh.
exactly. Malaria.
Right.
Um,
So you're absolutely right when you say land was cheap. Land was cheap. It was.
imagine that.
Yeah. Now, like
Whew.
who would have known? Who would have known
Oh
what the
man,
price on some of this stuff was going to end up being? I mean, I want to say that maybe originally the most expensive, like all in all places, was the beaches, but way out west where this is at, this was like in the middle
nothing.
of nowhere. The only thing that the closest thing they had was when Flagler put that railroad that cut across and
That's
they
it.
had these little like stop offs where they would drop off materials, but that was it. This was like the middle of nowhere, literally. Not when I say figuratively. A lot of people no, it was literally the middle of nowhere. And again, you pose a very good question. Why would he and think about it? A lot of the immigrants that came to the United States, they would stay up in New York because this is where there was opportunities for getting employment, for getting a job, and getting some money and making your way. So yeah, this guy had a vision, and they say that it was because his girl back in Latvia had
Right.
kind of like told him basically went off and married somebody else, but still the guy.
That's it. That's the cover story.
That's the cover story, exactly. So yeah, we have our own local mystery. But then again, so what was the like you said, and I think it's admirable, that you were left to basically do your own mission of discovery as far as things to believe in, whether it's historical, etc. So what was the first thing that you came across that you said, I would like to research this, or you thought what's out there is not really the truth, or there's more to it?
Well, I could tell you what. I read *Chariots of the Gods* as a teenager, and it was all
Okay.
downhill from there.
Right, exactly. And yeah,
That was
because
it. I mean,
Daniken was
because
the first one.
he was the OG. He was the man.
Yeah.
You
Now
know,
it's a big deal because everybody sees that program of ancient
right.
aliens, but a
Ancient
lot of people
aliens, right?
don't realize when he came out with that book, Chariots of the God, it was like, yeah, right, okay, uh-huh.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, they
they threw him in jail. I mean,
well
they
the
basically couldn't stand him, or if they were terrified. And especially what made him terrified was that college kids were onto it. And it started
yes.
seeping through the academic. And because I remember my uncle telling me, like, when he was in college when that came out, when that was a big deal. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that terrified professors. But but it's just logical. It makes absolute sense when you kind of read it and break it down. It's like, wow, this this seems
Well,
like why is that scary? I mean, why this is cool. This makes sense, you know?
Well, the thing is this, if you think about it, because back then, they had already been doing all these different archaeological digs on, and the Incans, in Peru and Maya and all this, but they were always looking at it from the scientific. And what he was looking at, especially when you looked at some of the etchings or the Nazca lines and all these things that he was pointing out, it's like you would think, why wouldn't you want to know what this stuff means? But I've noticed that in academia, a lot of times there's certain thoughts that they don't want to have challenged, like you said.
Oh yeah, especially when he brought up the whole Nazca lines and how they can only be seen from the air. And if you look at some of
Hmm.
it, it looks like landing strips and how whole top of mountains were just carved off. I mean, it's
Well, I
yeah.
I think that what happens is exactly like what we were describing about this guy, the one that did down here, the Coral Castle. That you ask yourself, why? Why would these people go through all this trouble, okay, to manpower, in other words, to carve or to create these temples or these, even those Nazca lines? Why would they do that? You always want to think, okay, there's some purpose, because let's face it, back then, you know, manpower was needed to grow food. They had
Right.
fields, if they were hunters, if they had war parties. So when were diverting manpower to doing all these uh, projects, you're thinking they're not going to do it for no reason. I mean, like,
Exactly.
I
I
mean,
mean, and why communicate to somebody in the sky? Like, even when Columbus came, even despite he was on ships, the first thing they asked him if he was from the sky. Like, why would they ask him that? That doesn't even make sense. If
exactly.
there wasn't a past history of things flying around in the sky, if you look at all ancient art, there's always some guy flying around in the sky.
Yes.
Uh, so to me, truth is in the art. So it's,
Well, that's
you
the
know,
kind of thing that you look at it and you think, especially when you look at some of these civilizations that supposedly don't have any type of connection. There was no contamination where you say, okay, well, this civilization somehow or other, they met and they exchanged ideas, where they all had that common denominator of, like you said, either a visitor from the sky, whether it's a god or some type of something where they're coming from above.
right.
Whether it,
Everyone tells the same story basically,
yeah,
and
yeah,
what bothers me, and I did the first book, the Suppressed History of America, which is kind of influenced by Barry Fell's work, America BC, and some of the early kind of diffusionist theories, which again make total sense, right? I mean, because they always want it to sound like, oh, there was no pre-Columbian contact, and they
mm-hmm,
just miraculously developed the same, ideas or whatever. It's nonsense. I mean, you see so much proof of pre-Columbian voyages and visitations, and it would make sense because the oceans weren't, they were highways. You got in a boat and you want to go explore. The same reason why Columbus
exactly,
wanted to. I mean,
exactly,
it's just human nature, to do this. And
mm-hmm,
and then you could talk about Columbus. Well, what maps did he have? What was he going off? Because there's no way anybody, especially the King of Spain and Queen of Spain, would finance some guy's expedition if they didn't have some sort of reason to. And the reason would be that he had Phoenician maps, or he knew that there was something else across and he knew how to get it, and promised them gold or whatever. But there's no way they would just be like, okay, you guys, we'll finance your big expedition because you're a dreamer. No way, that just doesn't work.
well,
You
yeah,
know?
and that's what I'm thinking. Sometimes, yeah, eventually, yeah, they did find all these civilizations, like, that they came across that, but and like you said, the cover story was that they were trying to find another way to China. Because before you had the Silk Road, but the Silk Road had a bunch of, it was very long. Plus, there was, you were traversing an area that was very times dangerous. It would take years for them to go and come back. So, but still, I'm thinking to myself, you would think that when he went in there to ask for money, because this is what he was doing, he was asking for money, that he had to bring in there some type of really solid proof, as like, I'm going to find something out there. Whether it's,
Collateral.
if it's not China, it's going to be something else.
Right.
But, and
Exactly.
and that's what they wanted. They, yeah, in other words, so because they were not going to finance uh, that amount of money for an expedition. Because remember, even then, you know, it wasn't too far before that people were thinking the Earth was flat. And even though they were royalty, they were not going to throw money believing this guy's going to fall off the face of the earth, literally. So there, he must have
Exactly.
gone in there with some type of convincing argument and proof,
It's
like you
just
said.
like today. You're not going to get anything if you don't have any type of collateral.
Of course
Uh,
not.
So
Of
it's the
course
same
not.
concept. And the thing that it's I don't know if you've seen the South Park episode where they kind of make fun of the Columbus Day and all the statues and all
No, I've
uh,
missed that. I've missed that, but I can
it's
imagine that must have been
so
hilarious.
brilliant. It's hilarious and brilliant. It's so funny. Um, but all of a sudden, Columbus is like some evil guy or whatever, and they don't even have a clue about anything about him. I mean, it's
Well, you know what?
you
I,
know,
I think of it that the guy was an explorer. You know, there's people that
that's
are
what all he was.
explorers, and and he was probably thinking, you know what? I need somebody to bankroll this for me. But if I just tell them I want to go explore, they'll say, too bad. But if I give them something that they're going to get for funding this trip, which is land and gold, uh, they're going to bankroll this. Uh,
Right. And the funny thing is, he never found any. Right.
well,
And they didn't. And it's sad because you know the Western expansion was going to happen no matter what. It was only a matter of time. So, uh, but the kind of karmic thing is how they're all for this gold, and they really didn't get any gold.
no.
So that's why it's kind of God has a sense of humor in a way.
Yes, it does. And it's one of those things that, but they got, but in that case, they got the next best thing, which is land.
Man, right, right.
Because remember, every time they would make a landing, they would claim it for the king, for the queen, or whatever. They were basically, which is like that was pretty simple. you know,
I was supposed to say,
we're here first. Here, put out the flag in the sand, and it's ours. But of course, that's the way
well,
things worked back then.
well, it's interesting because in Florida history, most people don't even know this, that St. Augustine, which is the oldest city in America, which was founded by the Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
it's a really incredible history there. And probably the reason why, like, the CIA chose it as their, like, retirement headquarters. It's a lot of old Masonic stuff going on in that city.
Really?
Fountain of Youth. Oh, yeah. St. Augustine.
Well, I mean,
Incredible, incredible.
I've been to St. Augustine quite a lot because you can't you live in Florida.
Yeah.
But I did not know that about the Masonic stuff. I did not know
Oh,
that.
yeah. It's hardcore Masonic CIA kind of retirement area. Because they're all into the cult, and the history evolved there, and with the Fountain of Youth and all that stuff. So
Wow.
uh, definitely, and plus it's super haunted. I mean, it's
Oh yeah, I
uh,
know. I know. I mean, it's got a very very long history. Um, from all the way like you said. And that was another thing also that there's now they're realizing that there was a lot of different groups that predated Columbus in finding the American continents, North America. They keep finding this evidence that just because they didn't expand on it, like say like the Vikings and the other day I was watching a show where they were even thinking that maybe even the Chinese came in on the west coast by California.
absolutely.
That predate. They just didn't do anything with it as far as the ambitions uh, of claiming land and then keep on sending over uh, you know, more soldiers because remember back then it was not only the land and then we send over the priest, conversion and the whole thing. They just didn't send a couple of ships and never come back. They just kept sending people over. Um, but I think that
Well,
a
the
lot of the
Pacific is
history,
much harder to cross, so I think that's the reason why we never saw any of
yeah,
that on the West Coast.
yeah, and they, I think that a lot, and I agree with you when you say about American history. I think a lot of it after a while is like this is history, but it's not real history, or part of it is omitted.
Yeah,
And
most of it is.
I personally, I'm like, give me the truth. I mean, let me this. I mean, history is history is history. It is what it is.
That's how I
Okay.
feel. It belongs to us all. If aliens were genetically engineering us thousands of years ago or whatever, what's the big deal? Like that belongs to we all have the right to know this, you know. So
Well,
uh,
let me tell you something. I have my own theory on that. That because you remember now in December they let that out, that cat out of the bag about that they actually were basically funding a program to just try to find out what were these UFOs that they couldn't account for. That the government, they finally actually admitted to that there was money was being put into that. And I'm thinking to myself, everybody always thinks, okay, when the government eventually really truly admits that we've had ET contact, I think that part of the problem, despite what people think, is once they let that out, what if they end up not knowing as much as we think they do? Because if that out, everybody's going to be asking, who are they? What are they here for? Are they good? Are they nice? Are they friendly? Are they going to eat us? And what if the government doesn't really know that much?
but well, that's part of slow disclosure. I think they have to. Um,
Acclimate
'Cause they,
people?
yeah, it's a slow process, and it's done for Hollywood and everything else. But the but because most too many people know, so they have to kind of just divert and reflect and figure out how to systematically let this out. And at the same time, it's true they don't know, and not every. I mean, everything's compartmentalized, especially within the government. So
Well,
you're only going to know certain things, and the real issue is, and it'll like, okay, let's take a look at this guy, Elon Musk, right?
right.
Look at the kind of things he's introduced. Now, you got
Mm-hmm.
to ask yourself, are you allowed to introduce these things?
Okay. Right, and I know where you're going with that. That it's okay. We're gonna introduce these ideas because we're gonna use this guy as an inventor, which of course
Yes,
has deep, deep
exactly.
pockets, so that he can bankroll all these different ventures. And this is the way of
Meanwhile, he's bankrolled by this deep state, and that's. But no one will question that. No one will even think of that. They'll just think, "Oh man, this guy's smart," So that's how it works. And then you have the real question, and the reason why we might not ever know anything is because the technology. You know, if if there has been ET recovered ET technology, and this probably has going on since even the Nazis. I mean, they had incredible stuff, right?
mm-hmm.
Uh, so if it's been going on since that time, keep in mind we stole basically all their, the American way. We come in last second, win the
Right.
war, take all the glory, steal all their scientists, right? It's crazy
Exactly.
stuff with Nazi scientists. No one bats an eyelash. Uh, so if they have been developing or captured ET technology even since the Roswell days, uh,
Right.
uh, can you imagine how far ahead they are now? And I would assume 80% of all UFO sightings are just government technology, secret government
Right,
technology.
and that's yeah, and that's the part that that it's like what's ours, secret ours versus
Yes,
not ours.
yes. And then who is benevolent and what is there actually a threat? I mean,
Oh,
who is good?
yes.
Who is like to me, I think, I think Trump has some sort of protection with the
Well, see, and that's that
benevolence for sure.
right. Well, see, this is the thing that and I'm gonna go on my little conspiracy here. You know what? Let's say I'm sure you've seen the X Files. As a matter of fact, that they're
Love the X Files,
the X
and I
Files.
know I love even the new ones. I mean,
Yeah,
they're good.
nah, exactly. But
Yeah,
the premise of the X Files was always that, like you said, the government had, since Roswell, had been involved with ETs and alien technology, and that they knew what was going on and that they had a handle on it. Okay, and their problem was always that they had ulterior or dark motives, but partially they didn't want to let out to the public what was going on because they had their master plans. But always in the
right,
back, it was the government was in control of things. But what if that's not really the case? And if you want to think of people getting scared, if that ever came out, can you imagine that the government ever says and they say, yeah, we have confirmed that some of these ships or these whatever UFOs they're not ours, not anybody on Earth's, okay? And this, and that, but there's so much we don't know. I think a lot of people that are used to the government being like the parent Like, okay, the day they tell us, they'll have know everything about them. Like that
Right.
parent-child kind of relationship.
Right.
And when they
Which is
realize that maybe the government does not know as much as we think they do, and then everybody's going to be like, what do you mean you don't know if they're friendly? What do you mean you don't know if they're unfriendly? How many are there? You don't know? Can you
well,
imagine?
that's the issue we face because there's the government that's shown to us, and then there's the actual real government. There's DARPA. There's the shadow government. It's in layers and
I
levels.
know, and here we
So
go down that rabbit hole. Yippee!
it's just what it is. I mean,
Isn't that scary though? That you
well,
would
it
have to.
is. It is, but the thing is it's not because it makes sense. You have, for instance, how would the government, um, our government that we think is, for us, how are they
Exactly.
going to let out uh, the truth about aliens or UFOs if it's and still at the same time say, we don't know, but they're not going to tell us about all the technology that they have because once they release the technology, that means everything we know is obsolete.
Oh, of
Meaning
course,
all
because
of the
everybody's going to want to know. Okay, the questions they're going to be.
right, because your gas
It's like
done, everything in our modern era is done. It'd be over with. Meaning whoever controls that, like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all those people that have control and made all of.
right,
Think about this. I mean, 100 years ago in the Middle East, they were basically fishing for conch shells and beating their camels. They had nothing,
right. No,
right?
no. It was a very some
So
of them nomadic or very yeah.
and they would be that way right now if it weren't for certain individuals and pioneers in America that developed oil and discovered oil and how to do this, right?
Yes.
So, and it hasn't been happening for that long. So,
Right.
you know, so in order for them to give that up completely, I don't think it would happen. And if it did happen, they would already be controlling whatever new technology that's going to about to come out to replace it with, because there's no way they give up the apple cart and the golden goose and have nothing.
Okay.
Uh,
Now, but I'm
so
gonna I'm gonna now that you opened that, let's go there. That you said about petroleum, and I'm gonna let's go into that now the big thing is all the electrical, all the transportation that doesn't use supposedly fossil fuels, electric cars. Okay. And a
right.
lot of people say, well, you know what? That's going to end um, our dependence on oil and fossil fuels and the environment, and blah 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 blah. Now, recently here when we had the hurricanes, back in the last hurricane season, there was a bunch of people that were trying to leave, and I don't know if you heard this story that there were some people. One of the problems that these people had, the ones that had the electric cars, was, let's face it, you can only go X amount of miles,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like you have a gas station. You're not gassing up on gasoline.
No.
And what they found out was some of these people, which there weren't that many, I think it was the Tesla, that all of a
Tesla
sudden
car.
they got an update and they told you can go further than you thought. In other words, Tesla, the manufacturer, pushed a button, flipped a switch. I don't know what they did, where all of a sudden these cars could go further than what the owners knew,
Oh,
which
for sure.
equates to this manufacturer has control
Mm-hmm.
or where and how far you can go in that vehicle.
Yeah, and why those and they're solar power, but they don't even tell you that. So you're just gaining power every day without even knowing it.
Well, think
Uh,
about it. If you can control somebody's movement, and I'm talking traveling wise, because a lot of people always think of it, well, it's great to go to work or this. But let's say in that instance, like people are trying to get out of the state because, hey, I want to get out of here. I'm not going to stay home or it's unsafe or whatever your reason is. And I wouldn't want to I'd be, besides the fact, once the little mini crisis, the hurricane crisis was over, I'd be really mad because I don't want somebody to be able to tell me you can't go that far or here, let me flip the switch. I'm going to let you go further. Because when you start talking about having your movements controlled, I think that's not a good thing for us at all.
well, that's the next step. That's why you're seeing the push towards driverless cars
Yes.
and basically transhumanism. I mean, that's the ultimate kind of goal, and
Yes.
that's where we're being pushed towards now. And you see it every day. I mean, beware of zombies, right? I mean,
Well,
so you have that's another thing I don't talk about at all: nanotechnology and robots and
mm-hmm.
how it's just it's approaching very fast. I mean, it's
Well,
gonna happen.
don't get me wrong. I I'm not anti-technology. I think technology is great when it serves us. But I think a lot of times it's it's presented as of benefit to us when indeed in the end it will not be that.
Of course, nothing ever is. I mean, we love our smartphones and look at all the information we
Yes.
could get, all the knowledge, but look at the
Yes.
people into
And
zombies, turn you into antisocial. Look at all the teenage suicides going on, way more
yes.
than it's ever been.
Yes.
There's so much negative aspects to it as well. The radiation, the brain tumors, you
Yes.
know, it's out of control. I mean, it's terrifying.
And you know
You know,
what? Because the other day I was, just about every other week, you hear of some company that gets hacked, their records get hacked, or an agency or somebody. And supposedly you're always thinking all these people would have a superior uh, internet defense, whatever they need, system on their IT, whatever. I'm thinking to myself, I'm ready to go back to my daytimer days, okay? Because I'm old enough to remember when I used to have a daytimer and I used to carry it everywhere with me. Guess what? Nobody could hack into it, all right? Where I kept all my phone numbers and, my contacts. Not that I have anything that interesting, but let's face it. And it was like, okay, you know what? You never thought about that unless you were stupid enough to leave it somewhere. But otherwise, um, like you said, there's some things that now we become so dependent on that we fail to see the downside of it.
Whew.
Um,
Digital. Look at they're moving cashless society, which they've been wanting to do, so they're getting rid of that, and they're moving towards the cryptocurrency, right? The whole
yes,
Bitcoin.
yes,
That's another mark of the beast type scenario. Everything in credits. Like every sci-fi writer who's ever lived basically has been warning us about this.
all right.
So you're seeing this as well, and here's take for example what happened in Puerto Rico. Puerto
Mm-hmm.
Rico got smashed with the hurricane.
Right.
Power's out. No one access to money. Can't get your cash because the
Yeah.
ATM is out. So what are you gonna do after a couple weeks and you ain't got no power? You ain't got no cash. Grandma hoarding the cash in her bed is starting to look like a smart thing now.
Oh, you better
Uh,
believe it. You better believe it. And a lot of people, uh, they don't. But you're always. I want to say, is it Japan? I want to say it's Japan. Where I believe you have to account. You can't have like cash. Like everything has got to be basically like a credit or a way to track your expenditures. Okay. You just like right now.
yeah, this
You.
probably is China or
I want to
Japan.
say. I want to say it's Japan. I want to say it's Japan. In other words, they don't want you to have cash in hand,
Of
or
course not.
much less gold. Forget that.
Whew.
They want to be able to track, of course, how much money you get, which everything is direct deposit now.
Everything's
Plus,
digital. They
right
want to know everything
where,
about you, what you buy, what you doing.
right. I want to
They don't
track.
want to know that you got $20,000 cash sitting in your
Oh
closet.
no, no, exactly. In other words, you
Uh,
have to explain. It's not like, yeah, and a lot of people they don't understand that there's certain parts of the world where you cannot go in and buy gold like you can here in the United States. And why? Because let's face it, you buy gold, whatever amounts or whatever, whether it's in coin or any other form, and you put it away, who's going to know, you know, what you have? And the thing is to basically track who has what, because that's how you
right, and that's
control.
why you
Ultimately, the idea is to control.
control. It's all about control, and this is why they're all trying to buy all the gold they can because they know that's actually
Mm-hmm.
never been worth zero. It's actually the only thing that's
Yes.
worth something. Uh,
Yes.
and the problem is people don't realize that gold is super scarce, and most of that gold is not even real gold. It's mostly tungsten and lead based or just gold plated. It's not it's hardly ever gold.
Right.
But we're in a situation where you know me and my uncle and we have a archaeologist. We have a team basically that found a lot of gold, like a crap ton of gold,
Really.
and yeah, we're kind of in the process of it's a yeah deal with the government of course, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a slow, careful, step by step process, and it's gonna get real crazy because We're getting close to actually revealing some, doing the first dig,
Wow.
and that'll be great. But there's even more there that's just so ridiculous. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of the Lost Dutchman mine. It's
Yes.
the okay, well, it's the famous lost mine in Arizona, right? In Superstition Mountain.
Yes.
So if somebody per se found that,
Uh huh.
the most valuable gold mine in the world, you imagine?
Let me tell you
you,
something.
you imagine? Yeah, insane. So that's why I know for sure Trump is president and was meant to be president, because we know what we found. We found it years ago, and there's no way in hell that could ever be revealed under Hillary or
Oh, I
Obama
was
or
gonna say that it's all in the
anyone else.
timing. I know what
So
you mean.
so when he got elected, we were like, whew.
Well, and you know what? I have a big problem. I have a big problem. This is my personal belief. I don't like in, interference from the government. And let me explain. I understand that we need laws to have a framework so that everybody's safe. I understand that. I get that. Okay, because there are benefits to having laws and structure in
We have
society.
to, but we have that. It's
You
called the
know,
Constitution.
that's fine. That's I don't have a problem. You know, there's a lot of people that's like I'm anti no anarchy. Thanks. Okay, forget it. That's like let's destroy civil. No, I'm not. I believe that we need laws and
Then
then we
what?
need structure so that the society can function.
Of
Okay,
course.
but when all of a sudden everything you do you have to account for or you're being looked at, okay, even now, thank God, like you said, some they've pulled back on, on the business, all these hurdles that they would put on businesses, okay, because everybody thinks just of giant companies. A lot of small and middle-sized businesses are the ones that employ a lot of people locally, okay.
Right. And it's almost impossible to do it because you have to pay so much in fines and taxes
Right.
and everything else that you don't even make any money. It's like absolutely
Right.
ridiculous. For
Right.
me to
And
open a restaurant in Miami Beach, are you kidding me? Like,
oh,
it's not even worth it.
it's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult, and I think to myself, um, that's the part that I'm hoping that's going to, because it's not only big companies, because everybody now looks at, that Apple is going to invest all these billions of dollars and all these big giant well-known corporations are giving out bonuses. But I think to myself, folks, there's a lot of small and mid-sized business owners that they offer a lot of employment to people where they live at.
Right.
Okay. And like you said, it was making it so difficult for them that they were. Sometimes they really do need the manpower. It might not be 200 people, but maybe they can employ 5 people. Okay, but that's 5 jobs.
Five jobs.
Um,
I'm thinking, but you got to understand, like Apple and all these big companies are coming back here because Trump basically cut off the
of
pipeline because they've been
course.
living good, getting free billions and billions in
Yeah.
tax write-offs for free for years. So, I
Right.
mean, they're realizing like, wait a minute, okay, we have to kind of funnel this back in and have a show, make it look like we're contributing back. But the little man, basically got wiped out because the middle class kind of got wiped out.
Yeah.
They're still picking up the pieces. They're still trying to figure out how we can, get a piece of the American pie. I mean,
Of
uh,
course. That's what I'm saying. Not every, and that's the thing. Yeah, there's people that do have ambitions of starting a business and becoming multimillionaires, but there's a lot of people, which I've always think is part of America's backbone, which are the small business owner, okay, who has a company, a small company or a small business, where he makes a living comfortably, and his workers make a living, and maybe they can pass it on to their kids if they want it. Doesn't mean they're going to be millionaires, but let me tell you something. These are the people that they they make they make things work. You know, and you don't have to go work for a big, huge corporation and that over that kind of sees you not as a person but more as a number. And I know because I've worked in huge corporations. I know what
oh, it's
that's
the
like.
worst. Yes,
I
it's
mean,
horrible.
they even though I worked during a time period where they were pretty good as far as like benefit stuff that you don't see anymore. And these were the companies that people would work for 20, 30, 40 years. And then you
Right,
would retire, but you could retire. You had nice benefits.
right.
You had a retire. That doesn't exist.
That don't
That's like the
exist anymore.
that's like the
No,
dinosaurs. What's
no, yeah, that's way gone.
you know?
No,
So
and they make it impossible to retire anyways. Like
yeah,
how?
I
How are you
know.
gonna like retire when rent is, $1,200 and you only get a
Yes.
grand?
Yes.
Like, how's that work? I mean, who on earth thinks that a $500,000 house is actually a real thing?
Yeah. As a matter of
Who the
fact, I
hell
want
has
to
half a million?
say about a
Who
month
has half a
ago,
million dollars?
I heard that Miami had become one of the highest city for rentals. The highest rental prices were here in Miami.
Unbelievable. I'm looking, 'cause I'm looking for something, and it's just like, why bother when that's the
Yes.
mortgage payment? I mean, because literally they'll charge you like 5 grand to get the keys, to move into a house,
Yes.
and it's like, well, I could just a couple more grand, I could get a freaking mortgage payment. Like,
Yes.
why would I even waste my money on that?
Yes.
But then here's the real question: is how do you save 5 grand, or how do you save 7 grand?
This is the
Uh,
thing.
you know, that's the thing right there. I mean, luckily I've been fortunate enough to make a few extra dollars from the books. But when you don't have anyone helping you, when you don't have grandma leaving you money or anyone else, you're pretty much screwed. So it's and that's the rat race, and that's what they want. And the system is designed so you never get ahead. So and look
Right.
at
Right.
80%, 82% of the wealth last year was accumulated by the 1%.
Right.
I mean,
See, and but
that's
this is,
crazy.
and you're absolutely right because I'll tell you, when I was in my 20s, and that was another thing. I'm not going to put you guys down, but I was I was ready to get out of my house. I wanted to like I wanted to leave. I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to I wanted to drive when I was 16 and but just to give you an example, back then, yeah, it's true. If you wanted to buy, let's say, a house, you had to put money together, but it wasn't so impossible. The amount didn't have to be so astronomical that you would be saying,
Right.
there's just no way I'm going to be able to put together this amount for down payment and for closing costs and all the things that pop up, let's say, when you're purchasing whatever, whether it's a house or an apartment, a townhouse. Um, it was an attainable thing, so then you had, like, how you have people that say they would move in with parents or newlyweds and they would put their money together and then they would buy a house, but you could do it. Now it's like, shh, you're all right, good luck on that. You'll get it maybe in 10 years, and that's if you don't go anywhere. Don't even go catch a movie, just stay home all the time.
Yeah,
uh
it's impossible. And the thing is too is you got to understand, you know, even at my age, you know, in America, like, we're unique in the sense that, when you're 18, we kick them out, or when you're 18,
well,
you're ready to go do it. I
I'll
mean,
be,
that's
you know
just
what, I'll be perfectly honest with you. My children are grown up, and one of the things I told them was, I said, as long as you got a job and, like a little part-time, and you're going to school, you guys are welcome, because I knew what I saw was, and I saw this, that if you didn't have some type of formal education, even if it was a macrame, you weren't going to get anywhere. I started in a workplace where people sometimes went in there with high school education, but they worked their way up and they got promoted. And maybe it would take them 15 years, but it would be okay. I saw that that was not the case anymore. Without some type of degree, a lot of corporations wouldn't let you in the front door, even to an entry level job.
oh no.
So,
And then
Mike,
you have millennials, like, who basically want to stay home and think communism is a great thing.
oh my
While their
God.
parents, the 20s, they're all about socialism. They don't have a freaking clue about anything.
No, no, that's like, let me tell you something. Talk about that that right now people don't understand that dependence. It's the price tag that comes with that dependence that you develop on the government to take care of you, because basically that's what it turns out to be.
Of
They
course, and
don't.
that's how they destroyed the black community, is with 50 years of welfare, and introducing the crack, and then taking away the fathers and the family, and it's destroyed uh, generations because of it.
Well, and you know what? I believe that ambition should be rewarded. And a lot of people think that the word ambition is a bad word, like, oh, you're going to run people over. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking walking on people's head. But that if you have ambition and you're willing to work for something, whether it's to study or to work or whatever you need to do to obtain or excel in something, you should be rewarded for it. And if you're one of these people that's low drive, well, okay, fine. Maybe you don't have the same as that other guy that maybe busted his butt doing what he needed to do to get where he was at. But I think that that's the way it should be, you know.
Right, but the culture doesn't allow that or create that anymore. I mean, the culture is degenerate. College is not looked at as a place that you're gonna learn and get anything. It's party and to get indoctrinated with social justice,
Yes.
liberal nonsense, and it's sad. But I mean, this is why you
Yes.
see, you know, um, doctors from all over the world, and you never see any American ones.
Well, they were saying, you're right. They were saying that there's a shortage of doctors here in the United States. As far as what you're saying, not that they're, they were, because some of them come from other countries and sometimes they finish their medical education here. There is a shortage of American doctors. And I don't. I even now, in my regular doctor, there's one doctor, and all the other ones are what they call PAs, physician assistants, which are very good, but still, that was
Right.
unheard of 5 or 7 years ago, really. And
I'm saying, and
it,
yeah,
well,
it's just
it,
but it's done by design. It's
yes,
literally it's
yes,
been done, and it's been steered this way for the last 50 years. It's no accident.
I agree with
So
you. I agree with you. I
uh,
agree with you that everybody thinks that things like that sometimes happen, like a thunderclap, and here it is. And I think it's a lot more
no,
insidious the way
no,
they work it in here, into,
but
like you said, the where it's the norm. In other words,
right. But the truth is, like, the individual is responsible no matter what at the end of the day for
sure.
everything. You have to have your own goals. You need to set them up. It's up to you to avoid the pit traps of society, and to know it's up to you to do the right thing, to do good, to do the
Yes.
best you can do, and do it. And then once you do that, man, you'll be all right. Like, the world will open up to you.
Well,
But
but
you can't expect things to be handed to you and then complain when your life sucks because you want to blame everyone else and you don't want to take the steps necessary to do it. Even though it might be a little bit harder than it was a few years ago,
well,
you still have to do it.
you know what? And I think a lot of it depends also on your mindset.
Oh,
Where
100%. It's all in your mind. It's all. It's the power of the mind. It's just like some people uh, easily can be addicted to drugs or have a problem with opiate or painkillers or
yes,
whatever. And some people like myself, I can have a few Percocets, no problem. It's not even a big deal. Like,
I know what you mean.
I don't have the mindset to like become a junkie or whatever.
Right,
There's more
yes, and I
important
know that.
things,
I know exactly what you mean. I've had, uh like one time I had a jack fall on my toe, and when I went to the emergency room, they gave me, I want to say it was Percocet or one of these pills that was a big opioid. I think I took one, and that was it. And I found that years later the bottle, which I threw out because it was like there was no. And I was thinking, man, there's people out there that would kill for this bottle.
It's like, oh, what are you crazy?
Exactly. It's like, you did what? It was like, yeah. I mean, I took one, and that was it. And and I mean, as a matter of fact, that's my area of expertise, which is addictive behavior, and and addictions, and etc. And the truth is, I mean, we could go into that as far as the personalities and prior trauma that makes a person, how can I say, they're predisposed to addictive behavior or falling into addiction. I mean, but
Right,
that's a whole different show. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of things going on, which, let's go with the opioid thing, which basically any type of addiction is wanting to escape reality. That's,
right.
that besides what it does to your body, that, your brain receptors want it and whatever. I think that that happens sometimes because, for some reason, we kind of lose the ability to deal with reality, even disagreeable stuff that happens to people. Okay. Um, where, believe me, I consider myself a happy person, but it's inevitable that unless you live on a mountain under a rock, bad things happen to you or to people around you, and you got to deal with it, and you might go for days, sometimes even months, depending on what happened. But some people don't want to deal with that. They just don't. There's like the resilience, I guess, is what I'm looking for, is not there to endure and say, I'm going to come out the other side. I don't need to take something to take me to the happy place, so I don't have to think about it. And I think that we've kind of lost that ability sometimes with some of, the newer generations. I'm going to throw them onto the bus. What is it? The Generation Z. Well, no, not so much Z, but the millennials, etc.
Right, because
Um,
they're exposed to everything at an early age. So by the time they're 18, they're kind of just like they've done it and seen it, and it's
well,
like meh. So it's easier, I think, for them to like we talked about earlier about the suicide rates. It's just incredible.
yes,
So
yes,
I think the damage is real, and then everyone gets depressed. I mean, that's super easy.
of
Like
course. Everybody goes through
it's
stuff that you're
that's
like,
normal.
yeah, of course.
Right.
And then
But
you
it's not normal to kind of stay there or to
exactly
go to the extremes. And and then plus it all depends on your home situation.
a lot of things.
Your
It's a lot of things.
we're all product of our environments and
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Yeah,
I've been blessed to have kind of seen pretty much everything and grow up in a way where God has showed me so many different things and so many different paths and so many possibilities. And I always was like, okay, teenager living with my aunt, and they're all cranked out, and it's the crack house, and all this, you know, heroin and crystal meth and all that,
okay.
and you're kind of like, well, uh, do I want to? Do I really want to go down this? Do I really want to be involved in this, or even, because you see, I'm very observant, so you kind of see around you, and you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, well, nah. And then, luckily, I always had sort of a connection with God and religion,
That's
in the
good.
sense, not really religion, but just,
I know
I
what you
like
mean.
reggae. I grew up with reggae music, right? So, Jah and all of this stuff, and it really kind of saved me in a way, because when I was dropped off in Miami and thrown to the wolves,
Mm-hmm.
like I had no desire to smoke crack or anything like this. Like I
Right.
just like it's like, what is that garbage? I don't. There's no point, And I always had my art. I did my music or whatever it was, and to me, nothing was more terrifying than losing my freedom. Like there's no way. I remember I
Well,
did
and
like
that's the
a
thing.
few
And
hours
and
in the county jail when I was a teenager, and that was enough. I was like, whoa, there's no way.
it's like a reality.
No,
And this is
no.
the thing. At some point, you realized and that you were writing this. That you what was your story going to be? Is really what it sounds like. And you at some point said, "What is my story going to be? Is my story going to be this that I was exposed to, or that's not the story I want for me? Thanks."
Exactly. I'm
Uh,
telling you, I'm a legendary figure. Like I have stuff to communicate. I know that's the reason why I had these experiences, because it was for me to be able to, because I had skills. My grandmother was a writer, and
okay,
I had these certain skills, and I knew that eventually I would need to be able to use these, and they would
sure.
come somehow. They would come into play. So it's just I
And
look at it as just ammunition for the future.
well, and it sounds, believe it or not, Xavier, that you realize something sometimes, like you said something about responsibility. The flip side of responsibility is that it allows you control over your life. And for some people, that's really scary. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, you're responsible, but that means you can control stuff. You're the one that controls what you want and what your story's going to be and what's going to happen to you, despite whatever your background was. Whatever. Wherever you came from, whatever. If you want to play the pity game, don't get me wrong. There's a time and place for pity, absolutely. But there's a point that I call self-preservation, okay? Which means I want to live, and this is the story I want, and I have control, which means there's certain decisions I'm going to have to make. And yeah, sometimes I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make a mistake. Hello, that's called being a human being.
Right.
And then there's other things that are going to work out, but I'm going to go after my dream, which it sounds like what you did. You went after
Yeah,
your dream and
absolutely.
these things that you wanted for yourself,
Exactly. I mean,
which
and I always kind
hats
of,
off to you.
I, I've always kind of accomplished whatever I wanted to, and that's the whole thing. Like that's why I know, like, a matter of time we'll be doing movies and everything
Yeah.
else, because it's just, I said I have goals that I'm out to do it, and I do it. It may not work out the way, you think, but point is you get it done. And I think that's what's lost on especially the younger generation is they're not taught properly to have goals and to take the licks, because obviously you're going to take a good beating, but you got to get back up. It's just that's part of life.
Well, you
So
know what? And I think, and I have to say, this is something that also the newer generation, with social media, which we were talking about the suicide, some of these suicides that happen because, you know, basically your life is under a microscope for good and bad. Okay.
Yes.
And in some cases, I'd say there's nothing worse nowadays than being ordinary. And if you don't believe me, look at all these superhero movies that come out. Like the
I
worst thing
know.
that could be is being an ordinary person. And you know what? There's nothing being average, believe it or not, or ordinary. It's not a bad word. As a matter of fact, the happiest people, the most well-adjusted people, are the average people. People don't realize that. You don't need superpowers. It's all great if you see it in a movie, but
Yeah.
ordinary, believe it or not, for happiness, for longevity, for all those things is a good thing.
We
Okay.
live in a celebrity culture and
Oh, of
everybody
course
wants to
we
be
do. Of
famous.
course we do. And that thing, like we were talking about social media, kids that have committed
YouTube
suicide.
star.
Yeah, that they've, that some things have happened to them, and somebody's posted stuff about them on social media, and the next thing you know, some of these kids who they might have been fragile to begin with for certain things, they end up committing suicide. And
Right.
you know what's, and I've learned this, and because I do remember when I was a teenager, where you think that everybody is looking at what you do, and the big
Right.
secret is nobody is. Everybody's
Nobody
caught.
cares.
Nobody
No.
cares. Yeah, for a minute, yeah. But then after that, people forget because they're all caught up with their own things. But
Right.
when
There's
you're,
always been bullied.
yeah,
And and
oh
and then
yes,
how do you deal with the bullies? You punch them back. Literally. That's
right,
just how
right.
it is.
Whether
And
it's a
if you don't fail to
bully,
do that, you don't kill yourself. You don't
whether
fall in a hole.
somebody, post something that they shouldn't, and some of these stupid kids that post pictures that it's like, what's wrong with you? Wait, would you do that? But anyway, whatever. It comes and it goes. But I know that when you're younger, you think this is the end of the world. And some of them do it literally, they literally and figuratively look at it that way. But it doesn't. That comes, I mean, some people, sometimes I don't even remember what I wore 3 days ago or what. It's like people are so absorbed by what's going on in their personal lives, especially also if you're a teenager or younger, that, yeah, maybe for 24 hours and then something else will come up. And this thing that you think, my God, everybody knows, everybody saw it, everybody's thinking or saying, guess what? That spotlight does not exist. It doesn't.
Right.
But you made a very good point. We're driven by celebrity here, and everybody either wants to be a celebrity or like a celebrity or thinks that, which is the flip side of celebrity, which is when you get the wrong kind of attention.
Right.
Which,
It's narcissistic. Everyone's
yeah.
that was a narcissistic
Well,
problem.
have you
And
seen? So a lot of these celebrities sometimes they set up things that are, you would think that's really embarrassing, but as long as they get some type of coverage, they don't care.
views, yeah, I don't care. It's disgusting, and who wants to be famous? Like I said, I can't think of something more ridiculous. Like I mean, I know famous people, and it's like they don't want to be famous. Trust me. Like there's certain things, you're artist, you do your work or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it comes to
Exactly.
the territory, but sometimes it's overblown, and it's really ridiculous. And nobody wants that. Like it's the old Bill Murray quote. When they asked him, "How do you like being rich and famous?" And he's like, "I like the rich part."
Yeah, of course. Don't get me wrong. Let me tell you something. I'm the first one. Money makes life easier. Let's face it. Money makes life easier. I don't care what anybody says.
Sure.
All right.
You think you're free? Try going somewhere without money.
Yeah, I mean, hello. But that's a capitalist in me talking. But the thing is this, that there's and I don't know. Well, I'm sure you have seen, all this thing that's coming out from Hollywood, where, with the price some of these celebrities were paying, especially when they were young and coming into the field, how some of them, what they call a casting couch and things like that, where they,
That's always existed, and now
yeah,
they want to cry about it 20 years later.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
come on. It's
yeah. This
just
was this was this was, if you really thought that you were going to go out there, um, it's
as
like,
someone who personal experience and done all that. I tell you,
it's
all it
like,
takes is about a week in Hollywood for you to just run,
well,
run, run,
right.
run.
And that is, like you said, you made a very good point. Since the 20s or whenever, when they started talkies and the Hollywood land was set up, and I
Look at
mean,
Charlie Chaplin. I mean, he was just that. That's always been that way, and they all know it, and these women they know it. Now that doesn't mean you're any less of a pig or whatever, obviously, but because there's still always a correct way to do things, and But
Well,
the issue with that is it creates this whole environment now, and it's it's really kind of strange because look at James Franco. I mean, they didn't even nominate him for the Oscar because they're worried about the backlash.
yeah.
Because some
Mhm.
some girl was like, "Oh, I signed a contract to do the $100 nudity scene,
Mhm.
but I didn't get my career didn't advance, and he wanted me to give him a blowjob or whatever, right? I mean, what do you expect? What do you think? Like,
Well,
how is that wrong? I mean, it's not like he's banging 9-year-old girls or
well,
anything.
see,
I
the
mean,
thing is, what happens with this is that, and I'm sure there's, I don't want to say all, but there's some people that are naive. And thinking back,
of course,
I'd probably be one of those that if I had
most
this
people are in that age
really
range.
talented in some aspect, I'm thinking I'm going to go out there and my talent is going to carry the day,
Everyone,
you
everyone
know.
does.
And then all of a sudden it's like reality time, and that's I
Full
think
truth.
right. Or and
Yes,
I think that also accounts for some mediocre talent becoming so famous,
obviously, of
and then
course.
you're
I mean,
like,
that's just how it is. Sell the soul. Look, and but see again, but they notice how they glossed over the pedophilia stuff,
oh
which is the
yes,
real issue and the real
yes,
concern in Hollywood. Corey
yes,
Feldman, give that guy all the props in the world, man. Like,
yes,
they don't dare mention any of that, right?
no. Absolutely not, because that's when we
Because
start
that's
going into, okay,
yeah,
before,
the
yeah,
real
it
guilty.
was bad enough that here women are, or men, because I've heard it goes both ways.
Goes both ways, of course.
Hey, you want to get that part, or whatever. Yeah, you did
Mostly
really
men,
good in your
mostly both.
audition, but guess what? We want come back for a second thing, and then the second interview after the audition is, this is
In my
what you're gonna,
hotel room,
whatever, whatever. Okay, but
you
that
know,
bad enough as it is, but we're talking adults here. The part where
right?
I think is unforgivable, because there's just no other way to look at it, is when you're talking children. Because at the
Yep.
end of the day, when you're an adult, you always have a choice. You can say,
Yeah, it's your
"Screw you,
decision.
I'm leaving. I'm not going to the
Yeah,
hotel room." You know what I'm saying? I'm
yep.
leaving. Bye. And you either walk, take a taxi, take a bus, take your car, and you get out of there. But when you're a kid or a child, sometimes you do not have that ability
You don't,
to
and that's
say,
to me is yeah, and to me that's the most sickening part, and that's why I applaud Corey Feldman. I mean, look at Corey Haim. I mean, Corey Haim, he
yeah,
was like
yeah,
13 instead of Lucas was raped,
yeah,
and that was
that's
it. I
horrible.
mean, that literally changed and ruined
Yes,
kind of
yes,
every sort of relationship, any fomenting of
yes, yes, it
into
does.
adulthood that he ever had. Drugs. I mean, he was done from that point
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
And he's just one of the many that there's
yeah.
more that's not
I'm
even
sure there's
talked
a
about.
lot of stories more unknown than have ever come out,
Exactly. Yep.
because one, there's the shame,
Of course. Yeah.
okay, or two, if you do become famous, is like, okay, I'm not about to tell anybody
Well, yeah, I'm
what
not gonna
happened to
be
me.
saying the head of Paramount did me in, and because when I'm super famous and my life's great,
Yeah.
it's something they're just gonna have to carry with them.
Right, and
But
I don't want especially if you attained any type of, fame, or you've got things going
right,
on with you, like I don't want to be cut off at the knees and that'll be the end of my acting jobs or anything like that.
yeah. Well, look at Kevin Spacey.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
they literally cut him out of the whole movie and replaced him. And
But see, and things like that. But see, and this is the part that sometimes I don't know if to call it hypocritical or what. I can't believe that everybody that works in that industry in LA, and all that movie industry, doesn't know all these things. Come
no, man, they
on.
all protected it, of course. I mean, that's why. I
Let
mean,
me
to
tell you
me,
something.
it's just what's done in darkness comes to light, no matter what. So it's just a matter of time.
Let me tell you
But
something.
yeah, they're all guilty.
You all,
Go ahead.
if you didn't witness it, you know about it, or second. I'm gonna give you, when I worked for a big
They're all
corporation, which
guilty.
is a microcosm. You knew everything that was going on about everybody in there.
Of course.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, it was like, even if you hadn't walked in and seen it firsthand, after a while you knew the rumors that persisted, that, okay, there's some truth to that, or you actually saw.
Right.
And it's the
And
same
Hollywood's
thing.
a small little community, a small circle. It's like in the music industry or whatever. It's very small. It's like they said, a small club, and you ain't in it. So everyone kind of knows. And
Right. So all these people now that
they're all
are
guilty.
becoming looking outraged, is like, you're outraged now. You
Yeah,
knew what was happening
right.
there, especially with the kid part. That's what I have a real, I and how can I say, when it also, when it comes to forcing anybody, even if it's an adult, a man or a woman, when I'm saying here, we're talking here rape, uh, or coercion, you're being forced. Okay, that's different. That's
That's different.
also
Right.
wrong. Okay, but a lot of these that you're looking at them now, and it's like, okay, okay, how outraged are you going to get uh, now that, of course, it's okay to do so? Your
Well, that's what it
outrage.
is. They're jumping on a bandwagon. It's
Yeah,
manufactured outrage.
yeah, it
It's
is. It is
ridiculous.
because it fits into the narrative of what's coming
Fits
out,
into the
and
narrative.
I want to be on the
Right.
right side of this. I don't want anybody to
Hmm.
think that I knew about it and I never did anything,
Right.
which is kind of bad in
Like
a way.
Oprah giving her little speech when she
Oh,
was
that
like
was funny.
serving up every girl in Hollywood to Weinstein, her best friend. You know, I
And that's
mean, come
another
on,
thing. Even, because I know they've shown these pictures of her talking, whispering, and what's his face's ear, Weinstein's ear,
kissing kissing his
whatever.
earlobe.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, even if it just showed her whatever, you're gonna tell me somebody that's probably been at every party, after party, before party, is not going to know what's going on with a person, with
Give me
somebody
a
as
break.
powerful like
Oprah,
him?
super Illuminati. She's like one of the only women or black ladies or black persons in general who's been in those meetings and been at the levels of like, the Mr. Burns, like
So
truly disgusting,
so
truly
now that
disgusting.
you said that I word, Illuminati, let's hear, what do you think is the Illuminati, or the concept of Illuminati has been around for a really long time. What do you think is the Illuminati now in the 21st century? Are
And
we
even
looking?
George freaking Washington was warning about this back in the 1700s. I mean, uh, the Illuminati is basically,
Are we
I
talking
would say,
globalists, or is that what we're talking here, or what?
well, it's the elite. It's the you know the and it's even consists of people that you'll never know, and that has power that's behind the scenes. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't even know.
Yes.
It's that deep.
Right. That if you said their name, you'd say, "Who is that?"
Who is that? You wouldn't even know. It's at that level, and it's what their goal is to have a new world order, and that's globalism, and that's why we've been steered in this towards the new world order for the past 50 years, and that's why they hate Trump so bad because Trump is like, nah, we're not doing that, and just basically destroying all their plans they've been working towards, and they need to have a new world order. I mean, that's why they love China. They use China as a model to force the rest of the world into because China has the perfect system according to their beliefs. Because China
Yes.
is communist, but only for the
Yes.
people. It's
Yes.
it's it's basically capitalism for them. You ever wonder why how anyone in China could become a billionaire when it's communist society? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Well, there's a reason why.
Well,
'Cause they
let me
figured
tell you
out
something.
how.
If you think about, and this is the part that I don't get. Regardless, can you imagine doing what they did in China, where you were allowed one child, and people would kill a female because in that culture, if you're only going to be allowed one child, you want it to be a male child. Which, by the way, I've heard that they have a shortage of females, of like marriageable girls. Um,
Oh
can you
yeah, of course.
imagine
Well, that's
that somebody told anybody here in the United States, you know what, the government at some point is going to tell you that you're only allowed to have one child. That's it. And if you don't do that, you're going to uh, forcibly get an abortion because you're only allowed one child per family. Most Americans would think, what? And it's like,
well, yeah. They're
hello.
trying to they're trying to make it happen anyways with
Yeah.
destroying the family, making sure you can't raise your kids, the state raising them,
Yes.
infidelity, the fertility rates all time low.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
trying to like get around through that anyways because yeah, and this is old world thinking anyways. Like you can look at Islam or like even in India anywhere like those having a girl is like, oh no, you can't, like I have to have a son and blah blah
Right.
blah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So
And that's because, and it's almost like, I want to say, because this is almost like, a lot of people will think of it as the patriarchy, but I think it's not really that. I think it's that it comes from a time when life was hard scrabble and you were looking at survival, and a male child could help you survive more than a female child, whether it was for hunting, for just sheer strength,
Right. Your daughter you sold for a freaking cow or
But my
whatever.
son, you know
Just
what? He can help me farm. He can go hunt. He
you can
can go
plow it.
whatever.
Exactly. Yep.
You
No,
know.
it's the old mentality. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, because you were looking at physical endurance. But I mean, I had this was a few years
Right.
back, and I never. I mean, I was aware of this thing with China, you know, that you only were allowed to one child and etc. But a few years back, she used to work with me, and she went to China, and she, you know, went to the capital cities and everything, and they went on a tour, and she's telling me she says she doesn't really see that many women or girls around. So one of the times she asks one of the guides, like, "Man, I see a lot of men, but not that many women. What's up?" And the guy told them that because of the huge amount of girls that, you know, that were born and the families would kill them because that one child thing and they wanted a boy, there was a shortage of females. He says the guy told her there will be many men here who will never be able to marry and have children because there's not enough women of that age to go around. And you know that takes a couple of generations for it to actually happen. But yeah, I could see where all of a sudden, if all you're producing or allowed to develop into adults, these are the next generation, are males, it's like, guess what, folks, there aren't enough girls to go around.
Well, that's why they're obsessed with robotics and marrying robots now, and
Oh, that's
having
like
these
that's
robot brothels and well,
let me tell you something. That's yeah, that's what was it? And I've seen also people like marrying like their cars. Like, what is that?
yeah,
Hello, that's
exactly.
what's wrong with that?
Total insanity. I know, yeah.
You
But
know, and
that's kind of where we're going, man. It's the
you know,
mass psychosis going on.
well, there was you know, there's a science fiction writer. I don't know if you ever heard of him, Isaac Asimov.
Of
He
course,
he
I'm
he.
Drake.
All right. You know, one of his main themes when it was doing the sci-fi for the robots was sentience. At what point
Hmm.
did the robots become sentient? Okay, and he talked about it. I can't remember what the title of the novel was. And there was one where exactly like what they have now, where robots kind of look robots, but they kind of like human, you know. And the story is where the girl falls in love with this robot who she lives with, but was meant really as like a companion, you know, like service, because of that blurring of lines of where AI becomes sentient. And let's face it, us human beings, we're wired to become attached to animals and things, and even our car. I mean, I have favorite things, but not to the point of wanting to like marry them. And
This is this is the main. I wrote a book on transhumanism, robot zombies, and this is the main concern
okay,
of robotics. This is making sure there's safety mechanisms for when the AI becomes aware,
right,
becomes sentient to the point where it realizes it can just wipe us out. So I
right,
mean, like you gotta have those safety mechanisms because it's just a matter of time. Skynet will just turn. I mean, it makes sense.
yeah.
Uh, but yes, you have the whole idea of fall in love with your robot wife or and
Well, because especially if it's designed to be human-like or to fake emotion, because let's face it, that they're
well,
faking, they're programmed to do it.
that's their program, right? That's why all art now is at a risk of losing because if a robot is programmed to create the works of Van Gogh, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
robot that's programmed to play every piece of piano composition ever written, where's that going to leave you in the creative aspect? And
Well,
we're not even in the creative zones anymore. Like we're basically out of it.
what the other day I was reading a piece about computer generated music, which is what you said, or basically automation or robotics, whatever you want to call it. And they were saying the only setback that it has now is that robotics or computer generated music, they don't know how to tell the difference between what's good music or bad music. They can produce it, okay,
Right. Well,
but
they
they
wouldn't
just
know because that's all based on algorithm. That's why
eggs
any 12-year-old with a computer can make a trance album or a hip hop album basically. But
right.
computers, same thing. It's going like it could write a novel. Like they're writing. Like, for me as a writer, it's terrifying because
Yes.
when robots are winning or writing novels and winning awards for writing novels based on algorithmic inputs, and I can barely finish a novel.
Yes.
It's like, what the hell's going on? It's ridiculous.
Yes. And it's like people don't. There's a movie that came out. I want to say it was last year. I think it was either Swedish. It was in English, but it was called Ex Machina.
Oh yeah,
Did you see
good
that?
movie.
The
Yep.
theory on that was at the end was how that thing that she faked. She like in other words, the machine had was able to tell when somebody was lying because they were able to capture all the telltale signs that humans give off when they're being untruthful. But us as humans, we can't do the same. And in other words, bottom line, which is what they're saying, we're at a disadvantage. There will come a point where
Uh,
it tilts in the other direction, and
we're
even though we
toast,
might be the
man.
creators, we will be at a disadvantage.
We're toast. Like I've already, I've studied it. I've seen where it's going. I know like their plans. I know that's like their ultimate end game plan. It'd be like the movie Elysium. They're living off world on their orbiting space stations, and we're basically down here kind of stuck with our robot overlords, and it's just a
Yeah,
matter of time. And it sucks, but it's going to take a lot to make sure prevent it doesn't happen. I don't think people realize, they're still trying to get World War III going. They're still trying to figure out how to, and those models don't work anymore. It still blows my
right,
mind that they actually convinced everyone to fight in World War II and World War One, and they're like, what for what?
right. Well, and I think that if you look at different cultures, different countries, the regular people, nobody wants that. Everybody wants just to be
Nobody wants
happy.
that.
Nobody wants
They
that.
want we got cool smartphones, and we got freaking HBO Go and
Yeah,
Wi-Fi, and we got
it's like,
cool cars, and
yeah, I don't,
we don't we don't.
I
Who
think people
wants
just
to
want to be
war?
happy. Nobody, it's like, I don't want to conquer another country. I don't
For
want to
real, no
conquer
one
its people.
does. No
Just,
one does.
I just want me to be happy, and I want them to be happy. I don't want to
Yeah, we
like
want them
have
to be
a,
happy. Exactly. We want. I mean, okay. Obviously, we don't want anyone in this day and age still stuck with communism or still
sure,
living under a dictator
absolutely,
douchebags.
exactly.
There's certain things that need to change on that front, but at the same time,
Yes,
uh,
I agree.
the idea of like a war-based economy is nonsense, especially when they could sell $5 billion in weapons. You don't need to use them; you can still sell them.
Right,
Like make your money, but there's no point. Like,
exactly,
no
exactly.
one cares. Like, no one,
I
nobody
think that
cares. I mean,
the
they're
general
trying to
population in all these
Russia.
countries,
Like, what the hell is going on with Russia? No, like nothing. What has Russia ever done? Like, who cares? Like, I would want to go to Russia. Don't you want to go check out Moscow and
yes,
not be like considered a spy or something? Like, what for what? I can't go. I can't go check out Russia. What do you mean? Like, it's
I
So I think that the old world and all this propaganda and everything is failing miserably. And I just thank God that Trump got elected. I
yeah.
know he's not perfect. I know
No,
he
I know
probably
that.
says some
I know
stupid
that. But
things,
you know what?
but
I think that
million times better for sure.
they needed
And I guess
they needed to kick out a lot of what was there, regardless of what party it was,
oh my God,
because
get rid
it
of
was
them
a
because
really,
they serve the same order. It doesn't
yeah,
matter.
yeah.
Republicans
They needed to
look
like,
behind the curtain, man. That's the whole
yeah,
point.
exactly, exactly. They needed to like wipe the slate clean, and it says not. It doesn't really have anything to do with party lines because it was
Of
like
course not.
everybody was in on it, and the ones
Oh
that were
yes,
getting screwed was us, the regular people.
it doesn't matter. Yeah, and so it's been an incredible first year, and we'll see. I think we got 7 more to go, and
Yeah,
based on what happened this year, I can only imagine, the turnaround is going to be. And I don't know. I think everyone should kind of pray for that dude and
let me ask you
kind of.
something. What do you think? He just came back from Davos.
Oh, it was great. His speech in
Yeah.
Davos was excellent. I mean,
Yes.
and they lied and said he was booed. That's not even true. They just lie all the time. To me, the best part is like his fake news, bombing of the fake news.
Let me
Like
tell you
how
something. I look at that
so ridiculous, so propagandist, garbage.
and you know what? I look at that and I remember when I was graduating, I was considering going to journalism.
That's what my degree is in.
And I look at things the what I thought being a journalist was, and I'm thinking, what are there any journalists left? Really?
No, let
Aren't there
me tell you
any?
something. No, let me tell you something. When I had my degree, and then I kind of worked the AP for a brief stint, and I realized right away the propaganda, right away the CIA was in control, the
Hmm.
narrative, and I was like, no, we're done. And then any actual real journalist who actually did something,
Right.
they get killed.
I know. I hate to say it, but you're right.
Well,
You're
hey,
right. Yeah.
I write my little bullcrap conspiracy stuff, and go to
Yeah.
film school and try to make some, see what happens. Do
Yeah.
good, and hopefully I'll be okay. But no way in hell I'm gonna risk my life for,
No. That yeah, no,
for that. It's just not.
the
It's
truth
not.
of,
Not
even if you're doing what they call investigative journalism, is like, what happened to journalism being the truth? Let's
yeah.
not put it one. Now,
Just, just
I'm
like
going to take my what I think about it. I'm going to report the truth, whatever it is, good, bad, or in between. That's what I'm going to do. That doesn't exist anymore. Like,
nah.
what
And
happened?
now on TV, like that's why I respect, like Infowars, and of course you're conditioned to think that's garbage or whatever. But that's you're conditioned because you watch CNN
Right,
or whatever. Like
right.
that's
Well,
what
these
they
big
they
media companies, they've developed this reputation of being uh, journalists, which is like, that's not what journalism is.
no, it's not. It's pure garbage, pure propaganda, pure propaganda.
Yeah. I mean, you always thought of the
People
best
don't listen to
journalists
that.
are the ones that went and got the truth and just brought it out. And it's like, it is what it is. You put the cards down where, that's it. That's what it is, good or bad. And
Doesn't exist.
that
Look
doesn't
at
exist
okay.
anymore.
Here's an example. Most of the crap that's thrown at Trump comes from the Washington Post. Washington Post, even though it's owned by Bezos,
Hmm.
not really because the CIA gave him like $600 million, right? So
Okay.
it's technically it's just has been even since the '70s the basically the brainchild mouthpiece of the establishment from the
Hmm.
CIA since the '70s. Nothing's changed. So it's always anonymous sources or blah blah blah. It's just it,
Well, and this is,
when you can't even read the paper anymore. You can't even watch the news. Like literally, you have to watch the local news, and then as soon as they go to a national story, you just might as well just mute it because it's gonna be spoon
I,
fed to them. It's
to me personally, I'm very disappointed because it's like, this is not what it's supposed to be. And I admit to it. There's a part of me that's a real idealist, sometimes to my own detriment. But yeah, I'm sad to see that that's what are considered good journalism or good journalists, and it's like, that's not what it was meant to be. Not at all.
I mean, I check the Drudge Report daily, and that's kind of the closest you can get to
Right?
a
Yeah.
well-rounded, because you're still gonna want to know and see what's going
Of
on,
course.
and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but for the most part, it's sad. I mean, I
Let.
remember when Yahoo came out and you used to have the Yahoo Answers,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fun. You could get on there and you could kind of crack jokes and you kind of make fun of stuff and get some information or whatever. But then when that PC culture hit and everyone got offended by everything, I mean, they got rid of
Man,
everything.
let me tell you
You
something.
know?
I came from a time when people would smoke at their desks. Okay, that's how far that was like. And
Old
don't get me
school.
wrong. I could, like I tell everybody, I could understand. I remember, you had the people that would smoke, and you see like a little cloud over their cubicle, and I get it. I understand for health reasons. Don't get me wrong. It's not like, but I come from the time where, talk about, like, then they moved them to the cafeteria, and then they segued, and then they moved them out from the front, and then they couldn't be by the front door, and then they put them out in the middle of the park. It was like they kept moving the smokers, and all these things. But what I'm saying is, the workplace, it was just a different, um, it was a different animal. And I want to say, even back then, where, like you said, there wasn't all this PC, internally, people would regulate people who were doing inappropriate stuff. Okay? It happened. Everybody thinks, oh, okay, everybody got away with stuff. No, people didn't get away with stuff. Yes, of course, absolutely. There were times when you had certain people that were so extreme in their conduct that, believe me, they would be handled by management. But for other minor stuff, if you had somebody that was like, I'm going to give you an example, somebody that was always using foul language or saying inappropriate, they would regulate within the people that were the other co-workers. They'd be like, shut up, man. Or people would walk away like, what are you doing? They would get ostracized. So you had the self-regulation, but you weren't out to get anybody fired. It
Right.
was,
That's the way it should be, though. I mean,
uh, you
and
know,
you gotta understand too, the workplace now. I mean, besides being ridiculous and no money, I mean, you made more money back then than people make now,
oh
for
yeah,
sure. And
yeah.
people are like, "What? What? No way!" Like, yeah, they made uh, He used to make some good money back in the
Yeah,
day, even
yeah.
though there might have been as many jobs, but the jobs that were paid a lot better,
Well,
considering what you had to pay for.
what it
It wasn't,
was what you made, and without having to be a top of the, was enough. The cost of
was
living, in
enough,
other words, that you
was
had
cheap
enough.
enough.
You could
Exactly.
live and you could make plans to better yourself.
Right.
Like
Yes,
if,
you're basically now you're paying almost 80% of
oh yeah,
everything just to survive.
yeah,
I
this is
mean,
what they were saying, that a lot of Americans are one paycheck away from disaster.
that's it.
Okay,
And no
so
one has more than, $1,000 in their bank at any point in
right, and
time.
like, yeah, I'm gonna put away money. Like, yeah, right. How?
No one.
You
It's
know,
impossible, and like you can't save it in the bank because
no.
they don't even give you nothing. So it's
Right,
like
exactly. That's the interest
they
rate.
use their money to gamble with, basically.
Yes, they do. They do. I mean, that's a whole. Let me ask you, this last book that you came out with, Liquid Conspiracies. What is that about?
Oh, that was a fun one. That basically was about how the CIA introduced acid and LSD, like psychedelics.
I know,
Um,
I saw that. That was like back,
yeah,
what is this, like in the 1960s you're talking about, as far as what, those think tanks where people were taking LSD or what?
yeah. Well, it went earlier. But basically, once in the I guess 50s, 40s and 50s, once they discovered Standout's laboratories
Mm-hmm.
was the only one who was basically creating the stuff. And they went and bought it all out, and then they tested on each other, and then they kind of, they're always looking for true serums, and they kind of started to dole it out to the universities and to the veterans hospitals to
Right.
monitor it. And basically, what happened in the '60s was Ken Kesey, the guy who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm-hmm.
He was a struggling writer at Stanford, and he, needed some $25, and they were like, "Oh, come do this experiment, LSD, for $25." He's like, "Cool, sign me up." So he went and did it, and it blew his mind.
I bet.
And he was like, "Well, can I get a job?" So he ended up
Yes.
getting a job as a janitor, and so he could just have access to all the LSD. And that's kind of what inspired him to write the novel, and that's kind of where it comes from, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And
Right.
eventually, he just stole all of it and left. And basically, that's what started the whole acid experiment, the Grateful Dead, and everybody else. And it kind of, you know,
All right.
uh,
Like,
and then
yeah.
Larry on the East Coast did his thing. He was from the stuffy doctor point of view. They were doing that. But what happened was they found out that you know it had benefits, and it was actually a good thing. And of course, the government wants to make everything illegal. As soon as they find out, like, oh, wait a minute, it's good. Like,
Yeah. We got to make money off of it.
gotta throw the hippies in jail. Right.
Well.
Make it illegal, throw the hippies in jail, create the counterculture, basically. But now, after demonizing it for so long, they're actually having to admit and basically, like, yeah, this psychedelic, especially magic mushrooms, they're
Mm-hmm.
finding out how it helps depression and everything else. So, uh, but it's a fun little book about, the cosmic humor of the universe, right?
Yeah.
Uh, LSD, CIA experiment.
Well, you know what?
Con- con-
I'm going to tell you something, Xavier, and I think that a lot of people don't realize it, because we live so, which is not a bad thing to live in the now, don't get me wrong. But I think that a lot of people fail to recognize that whether it's a
they,
government or a deep state, they plan for long. They
well,
plan
they're in
10,
the long
20,
game.
30
Yes.
years into the future as to the effects of what they're doing now. In other words, hey, 30 years from now, we want this to take place, or we want this, the population to be thinking this way, or whatever it is that their goal
Absolutely.
is.
They're
And
genius.
they start now, whatever it is that they need to do to achieve that down the road. And a lot of people think, I think, are like, oh, come on. And I'm like, no, if all you need is a little bit of understanding of human behavior, and about the humans, let's say, I'm going to say the United States, to say this is the goal we want, this is how we're going to get there, but this is what we're going to have to do. If we throw this at people, we're going to have a revolution on our hands. But if we feed it into the everyday, little by little by little, whether it's through
Of course.
cinema or
That's how
through
they do it.
music or whatever,
In,
whatever.
increm- it's increments slowly. That's why
Yes,
everything is
then
predictive programming through Hollywood, and
right.
even that. But it's so now it's so obvious. Like I can't even watch television because it's
Yes.
all propaganda. It's literally all written by the CIA. Every show you see is propaganda, uh, steering the masses.
Yeah.
Putting it out there subliminally, subconsciously.
And
But
let me tell you something.
you know,
I don't think I'm alone in thinking, that's insulting. First of all, why can't you just tell a story? If let's say you want to do a movie, you want to produce a movie, tell the story, fine. But there's always got to be some, like you said, behind the scenes uh, narrative, or this is manipulation or
right.
social
That's why
engineering. And it's like, why
exactly.
are you doing that? Why don't you just
And
tell the
people are
story?
see people are hip to it now. People are
Yeah.
sick of it. That's why Hollywood has had its worst year in like 50 years. That's why it's
Yes.
tanking. NFL is
Yes.
tanking. All of it's tanking because they lost the way. The point is tell a good story. You make a good movie, tell a good story.
Yeah.
People will react. They'll like it.
Yeah.
That's what we
Exactly.
need. That's what's missing. That's what I hope to be able to kind of get back to that. I have some film I want to do, and it's good
Yes.
stories. I mean, that's woman was a success, not because you know the woman power thing, or even because one of a woman is super hot. It's not because the story was good and it was a good movie.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's
Exactly. Tell the
simple as
story.
that.
Just
Period.
tell a
Period.
story, whatever, if yeah, of course, you're going to filter it in the sense of your creativity. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why some directors are better than others, or some actors are better than others. I understand that, you know. But at the end of this day, it's like, just tell the story. And leave
I
the
paid to
social
be entertained.
engineering out. Leave the
Leave it out.
leave it out, and stop being
Leave it
so
out. People are sick of
insulting
it.
that you want to tell me how to think or what
And
to feel.
virtue signaling, like, oh my
Oh
god. And
man.
it's funny because you notice they're removing the comment sections now, because like, if you read the comment section, it's like, oh, everyone's against everything. They're
Yeah.
against all the crap they're
Yeah.
pushing. Like literally, it's like 90 to 1. Like,
Yeah, you see a lot of stuff now nowadays. Like, let's say if I watch something on Netflix or a new series that comes on, I look at the comments because, like you said, overall sometimes it's like, forget, I'm not even going to bother because
don't even
I just,
bother, right?
like, why can't you just give me a, oh, and well, that's a thing for another idea, that they repackage everything that came out
That's
years
another
ago,
thing.
like, no,
Remake, reboots. People are sick
yeah,
of that. No
yeah,
originality
no
anymore.
originality, no
Which is
originality
funny
at all.
too. Like the millennials are offended by everything. I guess like Friends now is like somehow Friends is like the new. Everyone's offended by Friends now. It's
Really?
super like
What's
homophobic and it's super
what's
just
offensive
I
about
don't,
Friends?
like a bunch of things apparently. It's
Are you
uh
serious?
yeah. Look it up. It's
Okay, I
unbelievable.
am, because I'm thinking that's the that was that was
That's a
just,
great show. I know.
yeah. Like, what's offensive about that?
Millennials, man, they'll find anything and they'll be like, oh, yeah,
What?
it's ridiculous.
See, that's the resilience part I'm talking about. Like, what is that? Okay, we've become. I'm telling you, I I've I believe in, I don't believe in being insulting to people, but you can't handle human interaction this way where you can't, if somebody says something offensive, just walk away. I mean, it's like, this is life. Nobody
Right,
wants to
exactly.
be, you're gonna, or that you hear about all these people that need counseling. Are you serious?
Oh, tell me about it.
It's like, there's people out there that do truly, truly, for real, significant reasons need counseling. And when you get people walking in there and saying, I need counseling, because it's like, you feel like kicking them, like, right in the butt, like right out the front door. Like, are you,
It brings me to the Flight of the Concords, the song "I Got Hurt Feelings."
what is that?
That's kind of they're way ahead of time on that one.
Let me tell you something. What is that? Crimea River. And by this, believe me, I'm a pushover. I'm a softie. I'm a wimp. I am. I am. But you know what? This is life. You're gonna run into people who are disagreeable, or they're jerks, or
Of
you
course.
just don't. They're just stupid, and it's like, okay, you flip them off and you walk away. That's it. Hello, you
That's
dummy.
it.
Okay, whatever. Go on your way and be happy. But I don't
That's
go
it.
like,
Move on.
yeah, move on. Exactly. You don't. It doesn't determine, like, oh my God, I think I have to go home and be agoraphobic because going
Yes,
out
I
into
have
the
to go to
real
see
world.
a psychiatrist.
Yes, exactly. Oh
Well,
my
that's
God,
people
Xavier,
these days, man.
it's
Crazy.
it's it's been great to talk to you. You have got to come back, and we've got to talk some more about this because I think, like you pointed out, there's a lot of things that are going to come out about manipulation, which um, I'm totally against. I don't think that us as human beings or as a country should be manipulated in any way. It's insulting to us. It's insulting that we wouldn't know how to make decisions, or that we don't care about our fellow man, or
It's
any of
beyond
that.
insulting. Like to think that white supremacy or whatever they're spewing is nonsense. And it's
Yes.
like, wait, so you're telling me the Constitution is somehow white supremacy when the first two freaking amendments are freedom of speech, which is like unique in all the history of the world. We're literally allowed.
Yes.
The
Yes.
government gave us literally allowed to say whatever the hell we want.
Right. Which is the
And two,
thing.
the right to have a gun, not because to hunt, not because you're afraid of your fellow man, because the government. So you can protect yourself against the government. Uh, so I mean,
Well, you
it
know
has
what?
nothing to
And
do with white supremacy. That's profound. These were learned men who knew who knew what was up with the world, and they wrote this for our time, for us, not for them,
well, I
because they
think
still had a problem establishing it during their time. And think about how crazy the Revolutionary War is for them to even pull that off. I mean,
exactly. Exactly.
come on, man.
Yeah, this is at that time the England, the English Empire was they were the
Whew,
one of the most powerful. They were the most powerful army
ever. Yes.
um, in the world at that time. You know, and and I think is that when they, in other words, I think number one that whether you the right to bear arms, if you have a gun or you don't have a gun, you should have a choice. Okay, and you shouldn't be made to feel like you're a
Exactly.
bad person if you
Whew,
decide I
right.
want to keep a firearm for my safety.
Anyone who's ever traveled and come back from England and everywhere else, it kind of scares me to think like, wow, no one has guns, no one's allowed to have a gun, and mass murderers agree gun control works. You know, Hitler, Stalin,
Yeah, of
Pol
course.
Pot, every dictator in history, the first thing they did was take away the gun.
Let me tell you something. There was a point at that my job. I was, like I said, I was living alone in my house, and I had a very erratic schedule. And I would come home sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning, come home or have to leave in the middle of the night for what I was doing. And I had a firearm. Why? Because
Better believe it.
by the time I got the police, that's it.
It's too late.
Okay. And thankfully, I never had to use it. I mean, I know how to shoot it. But you know
There
what?
you go.
I was into self preservation. I didn't want to
Hey,
find
they
out.
used to teach that in school. They used to teach that
Yeah.
to your children. I remember I had to learn all that. It's just
Yeah.
it's part of being an American. You learn
Yeah.
the power and the responsibility, and we have this right. And hopefully, you'll never have to use it. But it's a lot. You feel a lot better, especially if you're a woman and it's late at night. It's a lot better feeling to have a gun.
Well, it was
Never
one of
know.
those things, and a lot of people don't realize that just because I decided it was to me my most fervent wish was never ever ever to have to use it, much less against another human being, because I think that it would destroy my life, even if I had to do it to save my own.
Well, you wouldn't want to. Of course not. Horrible.
But I didn't want to become a statistic either.
Exactly.
I was
Exactly. Yep.
I
Better
it,
safe than sorry.
exactly, exactly. So, and I think that when they start trying to make everybody like either that you're either going that you don't have a conscience, or you don't care about other human beings, or you don't, or you underestimate the power that you have with a firearm and what damage, that's not true. That's not true. Um,
Nah.
but at the same
They
time,
try
there's a
so hard with the gun
responsibility you
control.
have towards your own
Yeah,
safety. You
yes.
know.
But they try so hard with the gun control and it doesn't work. They can do all the false flags they want. It doesn't work. It'll never, not in America, it'll never work.
Well, I think
Those are
that, like I
tough.
said, all this, I'm anti-control. I am. I really
Right.
am.
Well, that's me too. And it's disgusting because, the founding fathers didn't, they didn't write the Constitution so we could have half our stuff given to the government. I mean, look at all of the fines, all the taxes, IRS, Federal Reserve
Yes.
scam. I mean, look at all the taxes we've had since, the 30s, like the 40s, none of that even existed, most of it. So it's complete nonsense. Most of it needs to go away. And it's funny because they collect record taxes, but they're like, oh, we're still in debt. Debt to who?
Well, the thing is this, that even now, a lot of these things that have come out about the IRS, and that's like, you know, that like it, they're horrible. The
Completely illegal. 24 trillion missing, but
yeah.
like they can't. People are still poor, still in poverty. You can't give extra 100 grand to everybody who pays their taxes at the end of the year to get like small businesses booming. But you got 24 trillion missing. You can't account for it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, there's a lot of things there that it just doesn't add up. And the upside of, of disclosure and the internet and people being able is that people now are realizing things that they're like, there's questioning like what is going on. And
It's the most
even
amazing part.
I want to say
Information,
people that
access to
normally
information.
were just like, I'm not involved in politics. I just want to do my, live my life, go to work, take care of my family. Now they're looking up and going, what is this? What is going on? Hello? People are like, they're like, this is not good. And this is not what I
So I,
thought it was.
I tell you what, man, the internet has saved all of our lives
Yes.
because the biggest mistake the government ever made was allowing that to get out and allowing us to have access to it.
Uh,
And you
like,
better believe they would have had many wars and many systems of control if there was no internet. So we could all
yeah,
thank lucky stars for that.
the power of information. Knowledge
Power
is power.
information. It is.
It is, it absolutely is. But anyway, Xavier, thank you so much for spending this time. It has been wonderful. I would love to bring you back so we can talk some more conspiracy theories. And of course, you're a Miamian, so definitely, we can talk also about what's going on here in South Florida and the weather. And you're all envious, especially if you're listening to this and you've got a snowstorm going on outside. So thank you again. It has been wonderful. And I want to wish you the best of luck in any of your new endeavors.
Thank you. And I could do this anytime. I had a great conversation, and
You were
I'm always
wonderful.
open to talk.
Yes, I will keep an
So
eye out for your books. Take care, darling. Good
thank
luck
you.
to you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Wow. See, we do have great weather down here. But anyway, just a lot of humidity, but I wouldn't have it any other way. A lot of food for thought. A lot of food for thought. Okay. And I'm a big believer in live and let live. And by that I mean, I believe I don't like when they try to regiment human beings like you got to think this way and you no. I think we should all be allowed to believe what we would like to believe, whether it's religious, political, non-political, if you want to be an atheist, if you whatever. I think we should all be allowed that freedom, okay? And I think that like I said, I believe in the structure of society to protect its citizens up to a certain point so that it works, so that it functions, okay? But not to the point where then all of a sudden everything you say or do is scrutinized and you better be on the right side of that argument. No, that's not human being. That's not what we're meant for. We're meant to, how can I say, be, I mean, we're all individuals. There's introverts, there's extroverts, there's people that are friendlier, there's people that are not friendly, whatever. But it should all be okay. You shouldn't be condemned for some type of behavior unless it's really aberrant, like you're harming other human beings. Okay, that's different. But I believe that we should be. I know some people are going, "Oh, okay, Marlene, yeah, that's the ideal." We should be free. We should be free um, to be happy, to pursue happiness however we want to be happy. Because I think ultimately that's what all human beings want. Whatever country you're from, you just want to be happy. Okay, and happiness is different things for different people. Sometimes for some people it's certain material things. For other people, it's like I have a family and I'm happy with this. This is what I want. I want to be having my children. Whatever it should be, you should have the ability and the freedom to attain that happiness, whatever it is whatever it's meant for you. We're not that one size fit all doesn't work for human beings. It doesn't. Okay, and I think that when whether it's very apparent or very subtle, when they start trying to regulate people and their thoughts and their behavior and steer you, no, 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 no. That's not the way. I want to say that the best of humankind comes out. It doesn't, because I think that when you don't put any type of restrictions or punishment, that's when like the Renaissance. This is where human creativity develops and flourishes, and whether it's creativity like writing music, or where we're talking engineering, technical, or mathematics, whatever goes on in your gray matter, that's where you're good at. Okay, that it just explodes, that ability to create that human beings have, whatever it might be. Once you start that, you know that either castigation, or telling people this is the right way or the wrong. No, mm-mm. I've said it before. I I believe in humanity. I believe humans will triumph against adversity. I guess I think that, a lot of people will say, well, uh, I I think that humans do value life, even though sometimes it's hard to believe it when we see things. But yes, I do believe that, um, not in transhumanism, but I'm a humanist. I believe that human beings are good. Okay, I do, and I know there's some that are bad, but I'm saying overall, I believe humans are good, and that we will triumph, and that we will, um, become the best that we have, which I think is really the ultimate of our existence. Besides being happy, is being to develop, to become our best selves, whatever that might be. And that's the thing. Not everything is right for everybody. You will have somebody that, and I'm going to give you as a woman, you have some women that want to stay home, want to raise a family, want to have their children. This is what it fulfills them. Okay. And you have a woman that says, I want to have a career, or I want to be an explorer, I want to travel. Things that maybe sometimes they just don't gel good with that family life. But this, like, not one's not right and the other one's wrong, or not one's not smarter than the other one. I think that we should all have that freedom to pick and choose, to uh, fulfill whatever it is that we, or that dream that we have, whatever it may be, and one's not better than the other. Okay, I'm getting out my soapbox now. But anyway, guys, I hope you liked the show. I love talking to Xaviant. He's something else. Um, Please subscribe to my channel, whether it's you're seeing the video on YouTube, or you're listening to the podcast version on any of the platforms like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, TuneIn. I'm there. Just look for me. Miami Ghost Chronicles. And I do want to thank you so very, very much for being part of my audience. And my true believers, don't forget to send me your stories. Go to miamighostchronicles.com, look for Submit Your Story, because for all the people that write books and have great stories that are published, there's a million untold wonderful stories out there that I'm waiting to hear about from you guys. So again, take care. And what's today for me? Today's Saturday. Have a great weekend wherever you are at. See you guys.